Afternoon, everybody. I'm going to spend the next 6 to 7 minutes, hopefully, discussing a concept called inward freedom. Luckily, a lot of you have already talked about a completely different type of freedom, which is I like to refer to as external freedom. That's the sort of freedom wherein you have freedom from oppression, freedom from the government getting involved in your life, the everyday kind of freedom that we take for granted and we make jokes about as Americans. So, what I want to discuss is what is inward freedom. I'm going to describe what it is, and I'm going to describe why it's relevant to each and every one of us. So, on that note, let's start out with what types of inward freedom are. Why is inward freedom important? There are two reasons why we may be able to be externally free from governmental oppression, as, for example, we all are as Americans to a large extent, but at the same time not inwardly free. That can stem from the fact that a lot of times our emotions and our subconscious values can impact how we act. They can limit our ability to control our own minds, and that's what I'm going to explain. So at the emotional level, I'm sure each and every one of you can think back to a time where you were angry at somebody, a family member, a coworker, friend, and maybe you said something hurtful to that person, and afterwards you regretted it. Do you think you had full control of your mind at that time? Probably not. But at the same time, you were still a citizen of whatever the respective country was and probably enjoyed a lot of liberties and freedoms guaranteed by the Constitution or whatever your respective home country is. The Constitution can guarantee us a lot of freedoms, like, for example, freedom to assembly or freedom to choose your own religion, but it cannot guarantee you control of your mind. And that's what this example about emotions demonstrates. Now, another good example is our own subconscious values. Our subconscious values sometimes can creep up on us. Sometimes these values we develop them deliberately. We go to Sunday school classes as a kid. If you go to church, develop them from your family, from your parents, develop them in school. But sometimes they can creep up on you. Over the course of time, you aggregate experiences, you read books, and all these things if you go through years of life without critical reflection, can inculcate themselves deep within your mind and manifest them in your actions without you even knowing. This is another way in which you can be outwardly free, but not necessarily inwardly free. You may not even be aware of all these forces internal to your mind that are impinging upon your actions and limiting your ability to think rationally. So let's try a thought experiment real quick. Think of a celebrity that you can't stand. Now, for optimal results, pick one that you can't stand, not for some moral or legal reason, but because they just get at some pet peeve of yours. For me, that person is Kanye West. He's a complete buffoon. However, there's a lot of people out there who think he's a genius rap lyricist. I don't understand why. Neither of us are necessarily right or wrong, and our statements about him don't bear any reflection on him per se, so much as they reflect our own values and who we view ourselves as. So, what does this say about me? What does the fact that I don't like him say about me? The reason why I don't like him is because I think he's showy and I think he's arrogant. And that's because I value humility. I'm also a pretty introverted person myself, so I get a little comfortable around showy people. And to be honest, for some extent, I take pride in those values. I take pride in the fact that humility is important to me, and not being showy is important to me. But why do I value those things? Now, Friedrich Nietzsche, a German philosopher back in the late 1800s, big bushy mustache, did a brilliant analysis on how we come about developing these subconscious values. He developed a concept he referred to as the slave morality. Now, slave here, remove it of all of its historical negative connotations. Anybody here can be a slave, and anybody here has been a slave at various points throughout your life. Being a slave is irrespective of your socioeconomic status, your race, your gender. It purely has to do with how you react to a given situation. Now, slaves live in resentment. When we act as slaves, usually we covet something another person has, whether that's a tangible material thing or perhaps an accomplishment. And when we covet those things, coveting is a negative emotion. Now, if you're completely rational, you'll view that coveting as a need to reflect on your own situation and improve yourself. But for the most part, a lot of us automatically seek to discredit that other person and console ourselves to some extent. And this is kind of what I do with Kanye West. And I'll get to that in a second. But in discrediting the other person, we not only console ourselves, but we also try to set ourselves up in contrast, establish some moral reason why we're morally superior to this other person. Now, think back to that particular person, which is for me, Kanye West. Now, while I may dislike him for a number of reasons, if I want to reflect honestly to myself, I'm also a little bit jealous of him to some extent. He's very wealthy, he's accomplished, and whether or not I agree with his lyrics, he's also very popular in that extent too. He's also married to a beautiful woman, which is pretty awesome as well. But it's important for us to reflect on these values, because in my particular situation, this stems in part from envy and also from my own fears. For example, as an introvert, oftentimes when I walk into a room, or walk into a new social setting or a big party or mixer, I fear going up to individual people and talking, striking up a conversation with people. And I'm jealous of people who are able to walk into a setting like that and carry on a conversation naturally and create new friends quickly. And that's something that people like him oftentimes can do. Now, well, as I finish up, I'll read over this fable by an ancient Greek poet named Aesop. This is about the fox and the grapes. It's important that we don't develop our values out of resentment, that we don't develop our values out of fear and out of inability to accomplish something on our own. Why this is valuable? Why is this valuable? Now, inward freedom won't enable you necessarily to make a lot of money, but it will, however, free you from restrictions that occur and emanate from your own brain that you may not even be aware of. So take that and as they reflect on it. The end.